Welcome back to the channel. This is part 16 to What If Naruto Was on Team 10 Chapter 16. Based on a true story. Hokage Tower. Hokage's office. Hiruzen stood on the lookout point at the top of the tower with Naruto standing behind him. He knew the boy was there. Naruto had been standing there for at least 5 minutes, probably trying to correctly word what he wanted to say. Hiruzen could tell from Naruto's lack of a boisterous greeting that it was important, so he hadn't goaded him into speaking. "Old man," Naruto finally said. His voice was rather low, showing the brevity of whatever it was he wished to speak about. Naruto swallowed down a lump in his throat and finally chose to raise his voice closer to its normal timbre. "I've read some things recently, and I know that my name is from a clan. A clan that was supposed to be pretty famous. The book told me lots of stuff about how they were the best at Fuinjutsu, and what the crest on the back of my clothes meant. So I just want to know 2 things now." Hiruzen turned around to face Naruto, showing the boy that he was taking his questions seriously. "Alright. Go ahead and ask away, Naruto-kun. I'll answer what I can." Naruto nodded and began to fire away. "Are there any more of them left, or is it just like what Shikamaru said? The part saying clan is extinct?" Hiruzen let out a sigh as he answered, "It is true. It happened long, long ago. Any of them that may be left are scattered to the corners of the world, and none of that bloodline claim the surname Uzumaki any longer." "I'm sorry," Naruto said, as he had expected that much from the whole "they're extinct" thing. "Well, that sucks." Hearing Naruto's blunt summary of his clan's current state actually put a small smile on Hiruzen's face. "Yes, it does, I would imagine. I have worked with members of your clan in the distant past, and I can certainly tell you that the book you read was accurate. They were fearsome fighters, energetic much like you but not nearly as much so," he said with a chuckle, "and they were as good at Fuinjutsu as you were informed. It eventually led to their downfall in the end. Having a village spearheaded by masters of such a complex technique led to their enemies teaming up to eventually destroy them in the end. I'm afraid all of their possessions were lost with them, so there's nothing I can hand down to you in that respect." Naruto waved it off. He didn't care much for anything material at all. "Don't sweat it. I've dealt without for this long back when I didn't know anything. It doesn't matter now, right? I'll make my own clan stuff." He scratched the side of his head and laughed uncomfortably as he asked his next question. "If you knew anything about my family, anything worth telling me, like about my mom or dad, could you tell me?" Well, now that he knows his clan was famous and extinct, it isn't so far-fetched to believe that someone would know who his parents were. "I mean, how many people named Uzumaki existed in this village? He had to come from somewhere and someone would know of that name." The old Kage thought, before he was struck with something else. Well, he's telling Naruto about what's within him so he can tell him this too. "I'll tell you what, Naruto. There's a man that you'll find in this village at some point. He's a big tall man with long wild white hair, and he wears wooden sandals. He's a pretty flamboyant person. You can't miss him." "How will I find him?" Naruto wondered, excited at possibly meeting someone that could tell him about his parents. "I mean, finding one guy is hard when I've never met him, and the only person with white hair that I know is Kakashi-sensei." Hiruzen let out a chuckle as he put his hand on Naruto's head. "Trust me, Naruto-kun, he won't be that hard for you to find at all. He'll probably drop right into your lap." I hope this helped, and when you do talk to Jiraiya, I want you to know you can come to me, and I'll try to fill in whatever he couldn't." Naruto nodded and smirked, before making the ram seal and vanishing in a puff of smoke. He is just as fast as Kakashi and Asuma said he was. XXX. Days later, Team 10 training ground. It had been a few days since Naruto's meeting with Hiruzen over his desire to bring his clan back to prominence. Time was winding down, and preparations were coming to a close with training time for the Chunin exams that would be taking place in Tetsunokuni. Any Jounin sensei in Konoha worth their salt was making sure that their genin squads that intended on participating were up to snuff for the harrowing challenge. including the Jounin sensei of Team 10. Come on people. Laps, laps, laps. Keep those hands moving. I'd better not see you miss a single seal in the lineup. Asuma currently had his team running full speed laps around the edge of the training field while making hand seals on the fly. This sounded like something ridiculously easy for Naruto, and it was even with 2 backpacks full of rocks strapped to his chest and back. Shikamaru pick up the pace. You're 3 behind Ino and 10 behind Naruto. They had been doing this for the last 2 hours straight. I'm not Naruto. Asuma. Shikamaru uncharacteristically yelled, why are you even comparing my lap count to his? He can do this for the rest of the day, as long as we stop for lunch. He could outrun you, if he had to. So pant tired Ino huffed as she kept moving. She had fought back the urge to puke not too long ago, so she was cool to keep going as much as it sucked going full speed. Asuma cupped his hands to his mouth and yelled to her, stop complaining out loud you guys. Talking makes you tired faster. He turned towards Naruto as the boy was about to book it past him again, only the sweat pouring down his face telling Asuma that he was even feeling it. Yeah, this isn't doing anything for him. He stuck out his arm and stopped Naruto in his tracks. Hold up. You're done. Ino and Shikamaru will only have to do 2 more each, and then we can move on. I can keep going. Naruto insisted. Asuma nodded. I know you can, that's why I'm ending it here, because the point of this was to get you tired and make you keep pushing through it. If I wanted to do that with you, we'd be here all day long and most of the night. So for now I'll teach you how to add your wind chakra to your weapon. He pulled out his trench knives. It's simple after you've gotten splitting the leaf down. Just treat the weapon as if it were the leaf itself. Generate your chakra the same way around the blade. Naruto pulled his machete from his waist and began to do what he had been accustomed to doing with his leaf before today. Like with the leaf he could feel his chakra had reached cutting potential, but seeing as how he couldn't cut metal with just his chakra, it further sharpened the already razor-sharp edge of his weapon. So Asuma gestured towards the edge of the clearing, where there were trees abundant. Go hack into something that you know that you wouldn't have gotten close to cutting through before this. Naruto shrugged and ran towards the nearest tree that wasn't their unofficial team meeting point with a battle cry, before jumping at it with a diagonal slash that cleaved cleanly right through the wood. Who? Yeah. Naruto exclaimed happily, celebrating his weapon's newfound cutting prowess by jumping around. He used both hands and started swinging around his machete in a theatrical manner while making whooshing noises with his mouth. All hail Uzumaki Naruto's clear-cutting machete. Fear my high-flying flow. He pointed the machete at Ino and Shikamaru, who stopped to look at him rant. Fear it. Okay. Ino said, hands on her knees as she took the time to catch her breath. Shikamaru on the other hand was laying on the ground, not even looking up at Naruto from where he was still gloating to the world with his machete. So what's next, Asuma? He asked the bearded Jounin, who walked over to them. There's only a week left before we head out to Tetsuno-kuni. Asuma started to say as he grabbed Shikamaru's hand and dragged the groaning boy off of the ground. I want to do something together as a team before we go, and right now is as good a time as any, while I'm letting you all come down from that workout. Hearing this, the blonde boy and girl followed behind their sensei. XXX, Konoha Hot Springs, Naruto, Shikamaru, and Asuma shared her on the male side bath, sighing in relief while sitting in the hot water. Asuma cupped a hand in front of his mouth and yelled towards the gate separating the two sides of the hot spring. How you doing over there, Ino? I'm fine. She yelled back, enjoying this time given to her to just rest up. It's fine since I can still talk to you guys over here. It's great. Being on the women's side and knowing who was on the other side closest to the fence made her feel rather safe, as neither Naruto or Shikamaru would be the type to try and peek on her, especially not with Asuma there too. So do you think we are really ready for the exams, Asuma sensei? Absolutely, he said, leaning back against the wall of the bath. He was in, your new offensive attacks are going to catch tons of enemies off guard if you actually have to fight. Shikamaru's actually been training in depth and managed to get some offense behind him. Now that doesn't consist of him sneaking up on someone. Whatever Shikamaru replied in response to the playfully backhanded compliment, troublesome adult. Asuma just smirked at him and kept talking, turning his attention to Naruto, who had gotten a cigarette in the bath with him and was currently partaking in his smoke. And then we've got Manic McSpaz Pants over here. I'm not a spaz, Naruto replied heatedly, before blowing his smoke directly into the air. I haven't done anything spazzy in. He started counting on his fingers before speaking again. At least a week. Asuma shook his head in amusement. Well, you having your nose in that book of yours is keeping you occupied. Are you getting anything out of it so far? He asked Naruto in interest, wanting to know how another facet of his students' private studies were going. He didn't know anything about Fuinjutsu, so having one of his genin begin learning it was kind of cool, especially if he was teaching himself. Naruto made a tiny hand gesture as he grinned, a little bit. The basics. I'm not nearly good enough to do anything cool. I'm doing exercises that just amount to me making storage seals. I tried to read further, but I didn't really get what it was talking about. It said something about how just sealing objects was thinking too small. I don't know what that means, since the book said that you could seal pretty much anything. So why would sealing an object like a house or something be thinking too small? It's a brain teaser, he said, running his hand through his hair. Shikamaru rolled his eyes. That Shoujo girl, and I told you that Fuinjutsu was going to be hard, Naruto. Just don't try skipping ahead and blowing off your arms. We need you in one piece so we can take that test. I'll be ready to roll, don't you worry, Naruto said, slapping some water over at Shikamaru jokingly. Ino spoke from her side of the hot spring. I thought you didn't want to go do the exams in the first place, Shika. What, did Goldie finally kick you into gear with that energy of his? Don't call me Goldie, Naruto said, seething at the name. You're blonde too. Not blonde like you though, Ino responded, and Naruto could just see the smirk on her face through the wall. Goldie. She heard a thump bounce off of the wall and let out a laugh. Oh, cheer up, it's a term of endearment. You should be happy yours is so nice. Asuma Sensei and Shikamaru aren't so lucky. Asuma's eye twitched in reference to the conversation. Yes, because the names Bum and Smokestack are so endearing. He then noticed Naruto getting out of the hot spring on their side, wrapping a towel around himself to leave and get dressed. Where are you going, Naruto? Naruto looked over his shoulder, cigarette still hanging out of his mouth. I've had enough of soaking in the water. I'm going to go for a little walk. I won't go too far. Alright, Asuma said, dismissing Naruto to do what he wanted to. Sitting in one place doing nothing was still something that was just out of Naruto's range of possibility. XXX Naruto's walkabout outside of the hot springs were just so that he didn't fall asleep while he was in there. How could his team just chill out and relax like that? He was all fired up for the Chunin exams. He wanted to get rolling again. He was ready for whatever was in store for them, no matter what it was. This exam was a test in more ways than one. It was a test to see where they stood among ninja that were supposed to be on their level. No fighting shinobi that were supposed to be head and shoulders better than them like Haku. And he wanted his rematches with both Sasuke and Tenten. Sasuke because they never truly got going with their fight, Tenten because he wanted to get his win back to say the very least, and that wasn't even mentioning Tenten's teammates, especially the kid with the white eyes. He knew that there was no way they weren't getting themselves a piece of these Chunin exams as well. He almost felt like seeking Tenten out, just to brag about the fact that he was going, but the element of surprise appealed to him more. He then heard some light giggling, but he decided to ignore it until he heard it again. He looked around, but didn't see anyone. However, once he heard another set of giggles, he growled to himself, thinking someone was messing with him. Chakura Hankai Outi no Jutsu, Chakra Echolocation Jutsu. Naruto's control of the jutsu at this point was so great he could walk around blindfolded if he kept letting out constant pulses of the jutsu. He had never done this to test it out, but the way things were now, he could see up close with his eyes closed and feel things at a distance out of his eye shot, and to his right behind the shrubs and bushes he could feel a large living presence. Naruto dropped his cigarette from his mouth and stomped it out under his foot before he walked over through the foliage and saw someone crouching by the fence keeping the hot springs away from the outside. What are you doing? Quiet, kid. The man said, not even turning to pay Naruto any mind. Are you trying to get me caught here? He then let out a thoughtful sound. That blonde girl looks like she'll probably wind up being a 10 when the time comes, something to think about for later. He said to no one in particular. Naruto's face twisted in confusion before he realized what was happening and gave the strange man a deadpan look. Are you really peeking on the women's side of the springs? A set of giggles gave him his answer. That's really sad, you know that? The man waved him off. Whatever, kid. Hey, you want to get in on this? He offered. A kid like you needs to learn about the healthy female figure at some point. Now's as good a time as any. Consider it a gift from the magnanimous Jiraiya-sama. Naruto's eyes widened, and he fished through the pockets of his windbreaker before pulling out the book that he had been reading recently. As he read the name of the author on the front, he lowered the book in shock. You're Jiraiya? You're the guy that wrote the book I'm reading. Hearing Naruto almost yell, Jiraiya turned around and stood up to his full height, towering over Naruto as he walked closer. Get real, kid. There's no way around, like you has read my works. They're for adults only. Naruto gave him a strange look and held up his Funjutsu help manual. This is for adults? I know I had to take a test to read this thing, but other than that there wasn't a restriction. Are you sure? Jiraiya squinted and looked at the book in Naruto's hands. Meanwhile Naruto scrutinized Jiraiya's appearance. Wild spiky white hair, big tall man, big wooden sandals. Holy crap, this is the guy that Hokage Joji told me to talk to. Jiraiya's face finally smiled as he recognized the book Naruto had with him. Oh yeah, that thing. I almost forgot that I wrote that. You managed to get into it? Way to go, kid. It's almost like you're my student. So what's your name? Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto told him, and the Hokage told me that you were the guy I needed to ask about a few things. After smiling at having found Naruto so easily, Jiraiya's face turned grave, so he knew enough about what was going on inside of him that he went to Sarutobi-sensei. Man, this was good timing to meet the kid anyway. From the looks of things. He smirked and pointed his thumb at himself. I'll answer any question that you've got for me, kid. There's no way I can let an apparent disciple of mine go without knowing things that the Grand Sage Jiraiya can inform him on. Great. Naruto said, getting excited now. Not only did he find the man he needed to see rather effortless, it was also the guy that wrote his book. What a great day to be him. And then the female voices from over the fence started acknowledging their presence. Who's talking out there? There's a hole in the fence. I see orange. Jiraiya and Naruto both paled, knowing their fate. If they were to be caught here, we need to get out of here now, kid. Jiraiya hissed in a whisper as he grabbed Naruto and took off running before any women could get dressed and chase them, or worse, knock the fence down and kick the crap out of them. We? Naruto asked indignantly as he found himself tucked under Jiraiya's arm. What do you mean we? I didn't do anything, you were the one peeking. They won't care. Jiraiya yelled as he used Shunshin to cover his movements of leaving the street. Lesson 1. Female anger is an unguided weapon. And just as they disappeared without a trace, a crowd of women wearing towels emerged from the changing room, charging out onto the street to search for whoever it was they saw getting looks at them. Damn it. Whoever that was, they were fast. The woman who spoke pointed to the side. Some of you go over the bridge and search over there. The rest of us will keep going this way and search. Remember, orange. And with that, the angry mob split up and took off. As the sounds of the angry women vanished from the area, Jiraiya's voice whispered, "Man kid, you are strong." Under the bridge crossing the steaming water of the hot spring, Naruto had his palms and entire body stuck flat to the underside, while Jiraiya held onto him like a leech. "Is your entire body stuck to that thing?" "Yeah," Naruto said, focusing on keeping himself stuck to the bridge with the heavy extra added baggage attached to him. "Can you let go now?" "I think they're gone." "Are you sure?" Jiraiya asked almost fearfully. He didn't want to get himself beaten up today on the word of some kid he met not even 5 minutes prior. "I don't sense anyone," Naruto assured him, as with the positioning he was in he couldn't see through the bridge with his jutsu. He could still sense life though. "It's all clear, Jiraiya-sensei." Jiraiya dropped off of Naruto and landed on the surface of the water, barely blinking in surprise when Naruto did the same. "Jiraiya-sensei?" Naruto pulled out the book and tapped it. "Oh. Okay, I've gotcha, kid." They both started walking on the water and jumped back up onto the street now that the danger had subsided. "Naruto." Both Naruto and Jiraiya turned to see Asuma and the other two genin on Team 10 walking towards him, fully dressed like himself. Once Asuma saw Jiraiya, he quickly acknowledged him. "It's good to see you, Jiraiya-sama. We should have a talk sometime." "What's up, Asuma-sensei?" Naruto said with a smile. "I was just going to talk with Jiraiya-sensei here. I've got some things to ask him about. I don't mind," Asuma said, looking down at Ino and Shikamaru. "Well, that's all I had for us to do today. You guys are all dismissed for the day." Shikamaru nodded. However, Ino stood there with an angry look on her face, tapping her foot on the ground as she glared at Naruto. "You know all of the commotion just now was from someone wearing orange. You wouldn't happen to know anyone wearing orange, would you, Naruto?" Naruto grabbed his windbreaker. "No, I don't." When he could feel enough anger radiating off of her to get Shikamaru and Asuma to step away, he said more. "Oh, this isn't orange. This is Tangelo. See? Tangelo." Ino narrowed her eyes and pointed at them with 2 fingers before pointing back at Naruto and walking away. "HMPH." Shikamaru put a hand on Naruto's shoulder and shook his head. "Yeah, you're dead, Naruto. Watch your place for traps when you get home later. That's what I'd do." Later, Asuma waited until his other 2 genin had left before turning to Jiraiya, who nodded. Jiraiya looked towards Naruto. "Hey kid, do you have a place to relax so that we can talk? Some of the stuff you're probably going to ask me might be sensitive information." "Yeah, sure," Naruto said, gesturing for them to follow him. "Let's go." XXX Hokage Monument. Naruto sat down on the head of the Yondan Hokage and looked out over the entire village for a moment before turning around to look at both Asuma and Jiraiya, who were standing beside each other with similar looks on their faces. "Hey, why are you here, Asuma-sensei? You don't want me to be?" the man asked in amusement, getting Naruto to fervently shake his head, fearing that he might have offended him. "Calm down, Naruto. I'm just here to help. Who knows, I might be able to help with something that you find out here." Naruto didn't know what that meant, but it didn't matter in the end. He saw Jiraiya take a seat on the ground as well, and let off a sigh. "It's kind of ironic that you picked this head to sit down on." Naruto grinned at him. "Well, the Yondan Hokage was the coolest, at least as far as I'm concerned. Whenever I look at his face up here, it just, I don't know, clicks with me for some reason. I can't explain just why he's my favorite when I actually personally know Sarutobi Jiji, but he is. Why do you agree to do this so easily anyway? And seriously, Asuma-sensei, why are you here? I thought you'd be more inclined to go find that Kurenai lady after we were done, like you do sometimes." Asuma sat down on the ground as well, only with more weight behind it in an irritable manner. "You guys just love to take shots at that, don't you? You saw me with her once. That you know of." Naruto replied cheekily. He then got serious. "So really, what's this about?" "Because Jiraiya-sensei, you shouldn't know me well enough to be okay with me just asking you any kind of question." I expected some kind of fight or something. Jiraiya crossed his arms, wondering how he should start this. Well, the thing is, Naruto, I'm here to tell you something. It's pretty important, and it has to do with the Ondame Hokage, which is a reason that I'm the one telling you, since he was my student. Naruto's eyes widened. No way, I thought the only person you trained was that Namikaze Minato guy that you talked about sometimes in your book. Jiraiya gave Naruto a dry look. Don't they teach you kids anything in the academy these days? That name is the name of the Ondame Hokage, that's him. And I'm here to tell you something that you didn't know. It's actually a major secret that no one is allowed to talk about. And it's directly about you. About me? Naruto asked as he could feel his heart start to beat faster. What was special about him enough for there to be a secret surrounding it? He was just some kid, and even though he found out just recently that he was a part of a fallen clan, that wasn't a good enough reason. He wasn't special yet. That would come when he could prove to others that he was. What about me? What is it? Asuma could see that Jiraiya didn't know how to word things, and for some reason his father Hiruzen wanted the Toad Sage to be the one to tell this, so all he could do at the time was nudge things along. Naruto, tell me what you know about the night that the Kyuubi attacked the village. And like a switch was turned, Naruto told them everything that he knew about it. The only topic that Naruto, fresh out of the academy, could recite back to anyone with textbook accuracy. Just like they expected him to know. Good job, Naruto. All of those things are absolutely right. But do you know how the Kyuubi was defeated? Naruto squinted his eyes in thought, not quite remembering what was told about how the demon was defeated. I don't know. A really super huge bagasse. Jutsu? Jiraiya shook his head. No. I'm wrong. So wait, I've heard that the Kyuubi could flatten mountains and make tsunamis with swings of its tail. How could anything except a huge jutsu beat that? Jutsu, kid. Jiraiya said, seeing Naruto's eyes widen. You see why it's important now? So what did he do? Naruto asked, excited that the new thing he was studying was the source of such a huge victory, even more inspired by the fact that the Ondame Hokage was the one that did it. Is it something that I'm going to learn? Asuma frowned at that. I hope not, Naruto. What the Hokage used to defeat the Kyuubi took his life. I never want to see or hear about you using anything like that. You're not supposed to die before me, especially like that. Jiraiya nodded in agreement. If Naruto got that good at Jutsu, he'd be proud, of course, but he was nervous when he found that Minato learned the Shikifujin, dead demon consuming seal, and the damn thing wound up killing him in the end. Still, Naruto, I want you to tell me, have you ever felt, I don't know, different? Have you ever felt any kind of strange sensation coming from your body? Naruto raised an eyebrow in confusion. Why in the hell are you trying to give me the talk? I know what the strange sensation is, Jiraiya-sensei. I'm not stupid. Jiraiya palmed his face as Asuma began laughing at the legendary ninja. Not that strange sensation, you brat. I'm being serious here. I mean, have you ever felt overly angry, scared, helpless? Naruto nodded grimly, remembering that he felt all three of those things when he thought that Haku had killed his team. Remembering that having befriended a spy almost got his team in serious trouble. Can you remember what happened when you did? Naruto started to think, trying to remember what he did when he fought Haku. I caught up to her, and I beat her up pretty bad. I don't know how I got to her so fast though. Haku had more speed than me. It was like I was seeing red or something. I didn't stop until I was just about to beat her to death. I think I broke a tree. His eyes then widened. Wait, I did. I almost broke a tree with just my body. I couldn't do that before, and I haven't done it since. Jiraiya figured that in the heat of battle Naruto didn't care much why he was so strong, just that it happened, and it got him the win that he needed. Naruto, there was no way for Minato to actually kill the Kyuubi. It's not mortal in the sense that you and I are. It's a force of nature more than anything else. All he could do was seal it away. What do you know about sealing? You've read my book, what is the basic concept of it? Naruto looked at his hands as he realized where this was going, hoping that he was wrong about it. Fuinjutsu seals. Things within another object, that's the basic concept of the art. That was the definition given when Naruto first started the actual manual portion of the book. Now when were you born, Naruto? Asuma asked him, when's your birthday? October 10th. Naruto said without missing a beat, same day as the attack. He then let out a sigh. I have been thinking about how weird it was. So it's sealed. Inside me? Where? Jiraiya lifted Naruto's shirt. Channel some chakra. Naruto did as instructed, and a spiral mark with 8 prongs around it appeared around his navel. That's where the seal is. Naruto looked down at it with a deep frown on his face. Well, if that isn't a kick in the head. And to think, if I'd actually done more things shirtless I probably would have caught that. That kind of sucks. Naruto took a few deep breaths, trying to process what he had just been told. I'm having a little trouble wrapping this around my head. Who all knew about this? Asuma pointed behind Naruto at the village they were overlooking. Everyone. Okay, well that's fun for a bunch of different reasons. He said sarcastically. Here's another question. Why am I just now finding this out? He asked, waiting for a damn good excuse. Dad thought it would be better if you didn't know, so you'd think you were normal. Only the adults knew, and they weren't allowed to tell the younger people. No one was even allowed to speak of it. Asuma tried to explain. It didn't explain why no one told him after he became a ninja, but seeing as how Naruto hadn't compared himself to the demon itself, that book on Fuinjutsu was a good thing, and he hadn't asked that, so it hadn't crossed his mind. I was honestly going to tell you, but Dad told me to wait for Jiraiya-sama here to return from his missions to tell you himself. You had to find out eventually. There was no way you could walk around forever without knowing. That's irresponsible for a ton of reasons. Jiraiya watched Naruto's stone expression. How are you feeling, kid? Naruto was currently running his tongue over his canines as he thought, so what does this mean? I have the Kyuubi sealed inside of me. What? Am I supposed to unseal it or something, and do something with it? Because I don't know how to. He said, lifting his shirt up, and making a half-ram seal as he attempted to unseal the Kyuubi, as if it were equipment. No. Both Jiraiya and Asuma said simultaneously. Jiraiya because that was a dangerous route of thinking, Asuma because he didn't know much about how complex sealing like this worked, and if Naruto actually could do something like that. Then what the hell does any of this mean? Naruto yelled back, pointing at his stomach. Everybody knew about this thing. That explains why no one ever hung out with me. Or anything. Why the adults didn't trust me. Why nobody liked me before they ever even met me. Tell me what the fucking point was. Naruto yelled as he jumped to his feet. Why me? Why was it me? Did he just grab the first orphan from the attack he could find and stick the Kyuubi in me? Asuma let him get his anger out, as did Jiraiya. He was still just a kid. How else was he supposed to respond to finding these things out? He had questions that Asuma couldn't answer. Why was it him? Jiraiya let Naruto pace around angrily for a few more moments before speaking. The Yondaime believed that you could hold that power back, and he was right since you've done a fantastic job so far. Naruto whipped around towards Jiraiya and narrowed his eyes at him. Why? He nearly hissed out. Why? Did he know that? How did he know that? What made him so damn sure that I could do it? I was just some random baby. And he was, since no one seemed to know about his clan roots. Being angry at something he had no original control over, and no actual person to vent on, just wasn't in Naruto's nature. What had happened. It was done to save the village, and in the end it had saved him too. If there was no one else, then that's all there was to it. Nothing had changed from 2 hours prior, when he didn't know, except now he had more things to think about. Naruto lay down completely on the cool stone that made up the head of the Yondaime Hokage on the Hokage monument, looking up at the sky. After a while he let out what seemed to be his millionth sigh of the day. So, what does this mean? Exactly? Nothing. Asuma said firmly, this doesn't mean a single thing. Absolutely nothing has changed, now that you know these things, Naruto. Jiraiya cut in at this point. I'm telling you this now, because you're a shinobi, and you can either embrace this part of you that's been there since the beginning, or you can try to ignore it. But something like what happened with the Kyuubi before might happen again one day. Tell me how you felt when you fought this Haku person. Naruto's eyes shut in the light of the blazing sun in the sky, like I wanted to kill her. That hurting her was the only thing that mattered, the way she hurt me and my team. I hated feeling like that, but I tried to just forget about it and take the basic lesson from it. Jiraiya nodded. That was the influence of the Kyuubi's chakra. Have you ever felt so angry that killing someone was the first thing on your mind prior to this? Naruto sat up and shook his head. The angrier you get, the more influence the Kyuubi can have over your emotions. If you just ignore it, then it can use its chakra to turn you into something savage. That time your anger was directed, the more power you feel flowing through you, the harder it will be to remain in control, and you may attack those close to you. Man, Naruto said, looking between the two elder ninja there with him. What a day, I really didn't see this coming at all. I think I need to go home and think about this for a while. He looked over at Asuma. Do I have to tell Ino and Shikamaru? Asuma shook his head. I told you that you finding this out didn't change anything. You don't have to tell them if you don't want to. It's your own secret and everyone has something that they keep to themselves. It's your call in the end. Naruto nodded with a small smile and stood up as he walked towards the edge of the cliff. Are you going to be alright, Naruto? Yeah, I'll be fine. Naruto replied as he got to the end of the Yondame's head. I'm going to head on home, Asuma sensei. I guess I'll see you around, to Jiraiya sensei. With that, Naruto started walking down the face of the statue. Man, this would have been useful to know how to do right before I graduated. Once it was clear that Naruto was gone, Asuma turned towards Jiraiya as the two men stood up. Kid never even asked those questions he wanted to ask you. He said in an offhanded manner, so what are you planning to do now? Jiraiya looked at the edge of the cliff where Naruto had started walking down. Well, I'd like to have a hand in training Naruto. I think there are a few things that I can teach him that I think Minato would have wanted me to let him in on. And he technically is my student, if he's reading that book of his. He noticed Asuma's frown. Hey, I'm not going to take your student away from you, Asuma. I just think it would be nice for me to teach him some things. I won't if you don't want me to. It's a week until you're supposed to take your kids to Tetsuno Kuni, right? Yeah. Asuma said, grabbing a cigarette and placing it in his mouth. I've got them going into the Chunin exams. They're damn good. They'll clean up for sure. Jiraiya made a noise, signifying that he understood. You know, maybe I'll head on up to see once they reach the final stage, if they get that far. It's going to be some great gigantic affair. Every single hidden village is supposed to have a stake in this one. It sounds like it's going to be a total clusterfuck. Entertaining to say the least. He said with a grin. Asuma returned the grin once he thought about it. You know that all of that just means one thing. That it's time to show off. XXX. With Naruto. Naruto was taking a walk through one of the forested areas that made up Konoha's namesake. Naruto stared at him hand as he walked along. He trusted me with it, and even if that was a total load of crap, what am I going to do? Just let it get to me. I've gotten through tougher things than this. This isn't even a setback. He stopped talking as he noticed a rock following him. A square rock with eye holes in the front. The entire time he had been walking, he had been trying to burn chakra by putting wind chakra into his hands for practice. However, he hadn't been thinking of this. With his skills with Nebakan, and with as much time as he had spent using wind chakra to split leaves, building it and holding it had become something of a second nature to him. Smirking to himself, Naruto stopped walking, getting the rock to stop as well. Naruto performed a theatrical gesture that ended with him slamming the palms of his hands to the tree, both of them linked by the wrists with one hand facing up and the other down, subconsciously sticking it there. You know, there's one thing I hate: randomly placed rocks. Naruto stopped the flow of chakra to his hand and turned around, but his hand momentarily stuck fast to the tree. Once he turned around, and he pulled his hand free, the tree inexplicably imploded in an area the size of his hands, felling it as it had been destroyed clean through. Naruto was so surprised by this turn of events, that he didn't even register the fireworks that came from the rock that had been following him, nor did he pay attention to the kids that came from the rock until one of them spoke. "Wow boss, that was so cool." Naruto turned to see Konohamaru with two other kids. One was a girl with orange hair tied up in two very large pigtails and a red blush on her face. The other was a boy with brown hair and glasses that had a drip of snot hanging from his nose. All of the children were wearing goggles, all similar in design to Naruto's, that he currently had on his head. See Moji, Yuden? I told you guys he was a super strong ninja, didn't I? Naruto blinked and looked at the tree. How the hell did I do that? Can I do that again? That was what he thought. On the outside his self-confidence needed a little pick-me-up, and this was as good a reason as any for an ego trip. Yeah, I guess I'm hot. How'd you guys like that? The girl, Moji, ran up to the fallen tree and looked at the destroyed trunk. What do you call that move, boss? So now the girl was calling him that too? That was just fine with him. And now he needed to come up with a name for it? Well, it technically was his jutsu, even if he'd be hard pressed to do it again, if he had to write then. Call it he stopped talking to think. He didn't want to be like Iruka and come up with a jutsu, only to have it saddled with a shitty name. This needed to be catchy. Call it Jiga Shintao, Jiga Impact. It's pretty badass, isn't it? Man, he could claim it if he wanted to. He knew what happened. Now he just needed to recreate it, or better yet get his clones to recreate it. The boy Yuden walked up to him with Konohamaru and sniffed before addressing him. Wow, that really looked strong. Naruto laughed and rubbed the area between his nose and mouth with his finger. Well, I have to be strong, right? I'm going to the Chunin exams next week in Tetsuno Kuni, aren't I? If I'm going to get promoted, I've got to be on my game. As the kid stood wowed and started to beg him to play ninja with him, wanting to actually play with a real ninja, Naruto smiled to himself as he thought, man, I know that whatever all of this Kyuubi stuff brings me, I can handle it. I don't know too much about it, and I still don't know why it was me. There are a lot of things I don't know, and I don't know how I'm ever going to look at a few things the same way again, but if the Yondaime Hokage really believed in me, the way Konohamaru seems to believe in me without knowing much about me at all, then I'm not going to let either of them down. XXX. That evening, Naruto's apartment. As Naruto walked into his apartment, he blinked as he saw the Hokage sitting in his living room. Hokage Gigi, how did you? Never mind, you're the Hokage, duh. He said to himself as he walked in and shut the door behind him. Hiya. Things, Naruto-kun? The old man asked him as he looked out of Naruto's window at the Hokage monument, of which Naruto had a clear view of from there. I know that you know of your burden by now. How do you feel? Do you have anything to ask me? Naruto shook his head as he held his stomach. No, I think I've got it. The Kyuubi's in me. I can somehow use its chakra or something or another. Every adult knew about it. I didn't. He gave the Hokage a wry look. I'm kind of upset about that, Gigi. I'd imagine you would be, Naruto. Hiruzen said as he turned around to look at the young genin, a far gone look on his eye. The anger with me when I came across you after the Kyuubi's sealing inside of you were quick to spread the word of what happened to others, and the news spread like wildfire. All I could do at that point was keep your peers from finding out in the future without your wishing by my decree. He turned towards the window again as he continued to speak. Naruto, remember this. A person is smart, a person is very intelligent, but people are stupid. If people were allowed to separately make their own opinions on you by themselves, then things may have been better, maybe. But when people talk about Something that puts them at unease, then mob rule takes over, and that unease turns to fear or hatred. Naruto frowned and spoke up, and they didn't bother trying to see me for me, just for what they knew I had inside of me. Hiruzen nodded. That's why the few people that gave you a chance and forged relationships with you did so, because they were able to get their own opinions of you away from the populace. And you've handled the treatment of neglect from most of the village magnificently. I'm proud of you every day, never more so than now, after you found the truth. Naruto walked over to Hiruzen and looked out of the window with him. Well, things are getting better. Iruka Sensei was always there for me like Asuma Sensei is now. Shikamaru and Ino are cool. Tenten helped me a lot when I first started out. Kakashi Sensei is weird, but I like him too. Choujin's cool to hang out with. Sasuke I like punching in the face. And Jiraiya Sensei is weird, but I think he likes me. Konohamaru and his friends really like me, because for some reason they think I'm the greatest, and who am I to crush a kid's hopes and dreams? Hiruzen chuckled a bit, as did Naruto. I don't know where we are. Though GG, since you didn't trust me enough to tell me this sooner. I could have handled it. Maybe. Hiruzen replied, but the night you came closest to finding out, and the way you are now are two very different Narutos. How do you think you would have handled it if you had found this out the night of your Genin exam? Because Mizuki was about to tell you, if you hadn't cut him off from doing so. Naruto gulped. He knew that he wasn't in the best state of mind that night. If he had found out that night, then there might have been a 5-star freakout on the horizon. Someone might have gotten really hurt, someone other than Mizuki. Hiruzen could see Naruto thinking about it, and even if I had told you myself, after that night and all that happened, all that you heard Mizuki say, would you have taken it nearly as well as you have here today? A smile came over the elderly man's face. I've always expected great things out of you, Naruto, and you continue to deliver on that front. Naruto grinned despite the day he had been having. Old man, you haven't seen anything yet. I haven't even gotten close to cutting loose. Just wait until the Chunin exams. I'm looking forward to it. Hiruzen said, putting a hand on Naruto's shoulder. If you need anything in the future, I want you to feel free to come to me or Asuma. As close as you are, you, us, and Konohamaru, at this point you're a full-fledged friend of our clan. You've got it, Hokage Chiji. Naruto said as he stared at the mountains that had his attention since he had been a child. XXX. 1 week later, Team 10 training field. Asuma stood in front of his 3 seated students as they looked up at him intently. I'm glad you all decided to show up today and none of you got cold feet. At that, all eyes drifted over to Shikamaru, who muttered a quiet troublesome. It's been a crazy 5 months, huh? Asuma said, thinking back on his time with his team, and in just a few days we'll see just how you guys stack up in the grand scheme of things. Ino's eyes shone at the prospect of the challenge lying ahead of them. I'm ready for it, Asuma sensei. Team 10's the best. She put her hands on her hips and flipped her hair back haughtily. Naturally, you should know that. You did train us after all. That I did. Asuma said in amusement. Naruto stood up next, dusting off the back of his shorts. Do you think that after the stuff I've been finding out lately I'm going to be anything other than 100% on doing this? Let's get this show on the road already, he exclaimed. Shikamaru stood up as well, shoving his hands in pockets of his pants, as if he didn't care. Someone has to make sure these two get through this thing in one piece, and as troublesome as it seems, he took a hand from his pocket and pointed at himself. That someone just so happens to be me. Besides, mom would bitch me out for the next 6 months if I didn't go and do this. So let's get this done, he said, putting his hand out, having it quickly covered by the other to Genin on his team. Are we all set? Absolutely, Ino said. Naruto grinned widely and nodded. Let's go kick some international ass. Asuma smiled and clapped. Now kids, we still have to get to the convoy so we can all head out with the other teams. We don't want to be caught behind and have to travel all the way to Tetsuno Kuni alone. It was finally time to get underway. For better or for worse, the Chunin exams were here. Ready or not,